Hello there, BookTube. My name is Daniel. Welcome back to my channel, Guilty Feet. I will be with you again. I've got no rhythm. Because New Year's Day. So I put up a video yesterday on New Year's Eve. I flew back yesterday afternoon, left London in the afternoon of the 31st of December, arrived back in Israel in the evening, went to bed, didn't stay up for midnight because I'm old and we don't do that anymore. But today in Israel is not a bank holiday, so I had a back at work today. Some people, I think, took an extra day to recover from whatever shenanigans they were getting up to last night, but not me. But what I thought I'd do, so I closed off 2025, and according to Goodreads, which is where I keep record of everything that I read 106 books in 2025, which is better than I did last year. But I've had years in the last decade where I've done more than that. But what is interesting to me is, so it's about 10 more books, 14 more books than I read last year, but my page count was about the same, which means I just read more books, but with more books would average fewer pages per book. Whereas in previous years, when I've read roughly the same amount of books, I'd read thousands more pages. So I think it's because I'm reading a lot of graphic novels, and I'm which I don't mind. I like reading graphic novels. They're short, but they count as books. But I'm not sure I'm going to be reading a whole lot of 500 plus page books in my future. I like the variety, so I'm choosing shorter books rather than bigger books. But I just would like to amp up my reading a little bit, not to read bigger books, or not for the sake of it, because I like reading and I bought a whole bunch of books. Anyway, what I want to do now in 2026 is go back over, because there was a big gap between the last two videos, like 3 months where I hadn't spoken about anything I read, and this is just a quick catch up of some of the stuff that I've read that I haven't, I think, mentioned here. So I'll just take you through some of these books right up to what I finished last night before midnight, and what I'm going to start now, my first book of 2026. Okay, so one of the books that I read recently is an American classic, Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried. And this was a book that my wife's students often read. She has students coming over from America in 10th, 11th to 12th grade, and they have to have their set texts from their schools in America. And this is one of the ones. Now this came out sort of 1990-ish, I think, and not because it's about the Vietnam War. Tim O'Brien is writing about stories based on his experiences in that war. This was not a big thing in my UK education, so kind of glossed over and not really made much impression of someone British educated, and that was the focus of my reading. But since learned, it's been on my radar, and we know it's a classic, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to catch up with stuff. And I read this. It's fantastically readable, very well written. It's short stories, but they're linked because they're all the character Tim O'Brien is telling these stories about people he served with in Vietnam. Spoilers, not all of them survived the war, but he does, and he's living to tell these stories, and has expresses that he has a responsibility to honor the people he served with that didn't survive, and so he tells the stories. But then he also, in a way that I love when people do this, he's writing stories about storytelling and how the telling of these stories makes them true, even if perhaps the words of the conversation that he's reporting are not exactly as that. He's telling stories, and he's writing about the telling of stories, which is an angle I always love, because it's self-aware and self-questioning, and it's asking questions about the very nature of fiction, and what storytelling is, and our right, or the author's right, to tell a story. So if you haven't read this, I really recommend it. If you have read it, as most Americans going through a reasonable education may have come across this in the last 30 years, I hadn't, but I'm really pleased I did, because that's excellent. I've already lent it to someone, an American in his early 60s, who didn't get this in school because it's only published in 1990, and he really enjoyed it as well. So I would highly recommend this. I'm not reading a lot of stuff about the Vietnam War, but this is a terrific collection of stories. Okay, another thing that I read this last week This is a book I must have seen on someone's best of list, and I thought, oh, I can get that. And then my friend, the pilot in London, brought it out to me, and I whizzed through it. It's called Sheepdogs by Elliot Ackerman. It's a kind of they're ex-CIA that got screwed over by the government, and now they're taking on two guys who were friends who sort of served together, and they've taken on a weird job where they're going to repossess a plane, like a private jet. One of them is a pilot who can do anything. The other is a dodgy character, and they go by their nicknames, which are Squirrel, Skwrl, and Cheese. And there's a whole discussion very early on about how nicknames are assigned to soldiers in the whatever elite forces that they're supposed to have. So it would be sort of fun, rompy, spies, double crossing, and getting yourselves out of improbable situations. Just wasn't on the A list for me, So if this had been, if I'd had a really good time with this, I might have picked up other stuff by Elliot Ackerman. I don't know if these characters are going to recur elsewhere. There's a kind of hint that maybe they would. But this was just okay for me, like a solid 3 stars, fun, but it didn't really. It wasn't as propulsive as I would want with these things. The set pieces and the action set pieces were not as kinetic as I would have wanted them to be, and so it was a good read. I'm pleased, but didn't really knock my socks off. Then this was another book that was recommended, must have been on someone's best of list. This is On the Clock by Claire Baglin, translated from the French by Jordan Stump. Well, that's a name. Imagine going through school being called Jordan Stump. Sorry, Jordan, but great work in your translation. This is published, I think, in France in 2022, where it was known as En Salle, in the room. Is that what that means? En Salle. But anyway, On the Clock, and it's a story set in 2 time frames. So we have a father and then the daughter, and each of them, when we're in the father's time frame, the daughter is young, and they're on some kind of road trip, her and her brother, and they stop at McDonald's, and the father is a bit concerned about the price of feeding the whole family. And then later on, we see the daughter, and she's working at McDonald's, and it's menial work for which is, she's just waiting to clock off. But this is all about being on the clock. So it's a satire about work. Satire's not even satire. It is a humorous-ish, but in the end, quite soul-destroying look at what is to be where the father works in a factory, and I think he's an electrician, and he's not always treated with the greatest respect. And then we flash into the woman, the young, who was a girl in the earlier time frame, and now in her time is a teenager, maybe late teens, doing this work, and the hierarchy in the fast food place where she's working, and the who gets to work in the French fries section, and who gets to work front of house, and who gets to wipe the tables down. All of this, the minutiae and the boredom and the quotidian nature of these jobs is all delved into over 2 generations, and not much happens. But what the style of it is that we drift back between the father when the girl is young, and the father worrying about his thing, and he's getting an award from work, but it's all sort of very it's not the honor that he perceives it to be. And then the daughter just getting through the end of this day and trying to work out whether she wants to carry on working in this menial job. It's the whole thing came in under 160 pages, yeah, it was good. But hard to recommend because it doesn't really leave an impression, and it is an impressionistic book. I say because the story flicks back between the 2 timelines, it is supposed to wash over you rather than take you through a plot where something happens and there are consequences to actions. This is very much a style over content, and it wasn't quite there for me, but it was good. I would recommend it, and it comes in this lovely. I got this lovely edition published by Daunt Books, is that in the UK, with the French flaps, which is appropriate because it's a French book. On the Clock by Claire Baglin, I don't know. Okay, another book that was on quite a few best of lists, which is already out in paperback in the UK, but I think this was on in the New York Times best of 2025. I managed to pick up a copy of this secondhand already because it's already out in the UK in paperback, but I saw this when I was in London just now. A lot of places were promoting this paperback. This is called Raising Hare by Chloe Dalton. And I guess the easiest comparison would be with something like H is for Hawk by Helen McDonald. No, did I get that right? Anyway, which I read, and that's a great book. This is not quite as deep as that. That's a book about grief for which the rearing of a hawk replaces or helps the author get through her dealing with the death of her father. But this is much more gentle and pastoral. Chloe Dalton had a high-functioning job in London in politics. I think she might have worked for William Hague, who was former leader of the Conservative Party, reading between the lines and the acknowledgements, etc. But during the pandemic, she moves to the countryside, to a home that's always been in the family, or for whatever reason, she's in this country house that's on some grounds near some fields, and she discovers a young abandoned leveret, which is a baby hare. Now, and the book goes into great detail about how hares are not like rabbits, which have been domesticated, and people have often had bunny rabbits as pets, but hares are not domesticated, and but this poor abandoned infant leveret is going to freeze to death or be eaten or die if she doesn't do anything. But she knows, she's very careful about not wanting to touch or imprint or disturb the creature's fur in any way, and she's immensely respectful in a way that turns out to be, maybe sort of more pedantically caring about it than I would have instantly thought about being. But she's so concerned about doing the right thing, and it becomes quite a lovely story about observation and spending time in the orbit of nature, rather than, this is how I saved this creature's life and we bonded and would cuddle up to me in bed. No, she barely touches this hare as it grows from a baby, and she manages to feed it without this and give it some milk, but then stay away from it and give it some peace. And it's all about giving space to nature rather than imposing oneself on nature. And leveret ends up remaining in the orbit of the house, despite the fact these are wild creatures, and gives birth and more than once. And the author's relationship to what is happening around her is very beautifully written. It's I don't seek out gorgeous nature writing, but this was something special and lovely. I guess not for everyone. I don't think it has the depth of H is for Hawk, but it's a lovely read about someone who genuinely cares and has opened her life up to living with nature rather than imposing her will upon nature. Raising Hare, yeah, quite lovely. What else? Okay, this completely different. This is a left turn entirely from Raising Hare. This is The Night of Baba Yaga by Akira Otani. This is translated from the Japanese by Sam Bett, B-E-T-T. So this was published in Japanese. I won't try, it doesn't say. Published in Japanese. When was it published in Japan? 2020, and translated in English, The Night of Baba Yaga. And this is, what, if you see those colours, what does that lead you to believe it might be? So the colours are chosen here very specifically, I think, to hint at Uma Thurman's character in Kill Bill, who was a warrior woman, and the big scene in Kill Bill Part 1, where she takes on the Crazy 88, is it? Before the final face-off with I can't remember the name of her character. So yeah, definitely the design of the book is supposed to hint towards Kill Bill, but this is the crazy queer Yakuza epic that you didn't know you needed. It's fast, it's funny, it's rough, violent, bloody to the point of excess, unrepentantly so, and things happen in it which would place this outside of what I'm guessing some people would want to read. But I thought it was an absolute romp. There is a bit of misdirection, which I don't even want to hint at, because I, as a sucker, fell for it head over heels. And saying, whoa, that's what they've done. I thought it was neatly handled. It may seem cheesy to others, but I fell for this in a big way. This was a fun read. Anyone who likes, and I don't watch horror movies or kung fu movies or whatever, or whatever martial art that these people practice, but I do like reading well choreographed fights and people who are tough and found families, and this hit a lot of my bells, and I thought that was a great romp. The Night of Baba Yaga. I'm trying to think who I'd recommend this to. There are some of you out there who will just get a kick out of that, but I had fun with it. Okay, what else did I read? This I read last Shabbat. This was already one of the books that I bought half price in Waterstones, and I read it in one afternoon immediately. I'm talking about Mark Ronson's Night People, which was just super fun. It comes with a playlist. I've already put it. There's a QR code on the back, which allows you to. Here, I don't know if anyone can want to freeze the frame and try and capture that QR code. I don't know if you can, but that takes you to the playlist that Mark Ronson put together. I don't know if he put it together. Every single song that he mentions in here is on that playlist. So I've been working my way through that because I, believe it or not, was not entirely familiar with the oeuvre of Old Dirty Bastard and the Wu-Tang Clan. I'm not sure I'm a convert, but reading Mark Ronson's story of his life in the 90s as a sort of New York brat, if you know anything about Mark Ronson, his stepfather was a rock star, was a songwriter and guitarist in Foreigner, which was reasonably big deal in the late 70s, early 80s. And so he grew up with some privilege, and he's aware exactly of what he is, a white kid in a private school in Manhattan, with money to spend on records and his own studio at home because his father-in-law's a rock star. His stepfather's a rock star. But he addresses all of this with some self-deprecation and some wit, and then the story of the hustle of becoming a DJ and making his way in the scene in the 90s is entertainingly told, and that's the word I would use probably for the whole book. It's just super entertaining. He comes across very well, and this was a great read. And it stops in about the year 2000, so we don't get any of the success years and the producer of the year and the Grammys and Amy Winehouse and Oscars. That this is all before then. This is just about the hustle and the love of music and wanting to be a DJ and the thrill of putting the needle on a track that lifts the roof off in a club. And then that's not my world. I'm not a clubber or a drinker or a drugger or any of those things. Even though I was, he's a little bit younger than me, Mark Ronson, but not that much, 5 or 6 years younger than me. But it was never my world. But he brings it, introduces it in a way that's accessible and entertaining. And if you like that kind of thing, and if you've got any love for Mark Ronson, that was a great read. Next up is the latest. This is the number 9 in the series of probably, I read a lot of series of detective, crime, spy, those kind of things, and I usually wait and pick them up secondhand because they always are available. I can be 2 or 3 years behind. Even if they're still in print, I can be a few years behind and just wait and pick them up when I feel like it. But I think this is the only writer and the only series that I am buying in hardback new, as close to publication as I can, because they have been consistently super fun, super entertaining, super great plots and characters and surprises. And I'm talking, of course, about Mick Herron's Slow Horses, the Slough House series. This is number 9, Clowntown, as this was published a couple of months ago, and I got it half price in the Waterstones sale. So instead of £22, I paid £11 for it, and very happy to have done so. Read this on the plane, mostly. I started reading it in London and finished it on the plane journey home yesterday. either you're into this world or you're not. If you've watched the Apple TV show, which is fantastic, by the way, then I urge you to go back and read the books, because I love the Apple TV show, but I love Gary Oldman, but he's not my Jackson Lamb. But it doesn't matter, because the show works anyway. But Heron is doing things with his characters, to his characters, and surprising you, and there is genuine jeopardy. Not everyone who starts the book is going to make it through to the end of the book alive. And most importantly, it's funny. The jokes here land, they work. He's really doing great work, Heron, and funny stuff. And I wish I could pick out examples, but I probably have to read the whole thing again, because it's just riddled with good jokes. Maybe I'll read something from the opening, because it was so good. 1 second, I'm going to pause for 1 second, because I want to find a section. I'm just going to read you something from early on, so you get a taste of the humor. All right, I'm going to read, this is from the very opening of the book, where it's an unnamed character is recalling what it was like to kill somebody by running over their head with a Land Rover Defender, and it talks about how it's important to be up close and personal and understand. Putting things into words was always a disappointment. Being there, though, getting so close to the subject you were sharing his final moment, the concrete petrol-patched and gritty, the tire smelling of, well, tires, but also of everything else, of dog shit, blood and feathers, of the rain on the streets and stinking tar, of beer and chemicals and fistfights after closing time, and the wrong sort of music choking up the jukebox. Everything cascading at once, round and round, and your eyes on the subjects, and his on the tire, so close he'd be breathing in the tread, which is where evidence would be left, because no hose was going to clean that wheel. All that panic, the rat-trapped memories scuttling about, the fine details stored in the brain's grey matter, it would all be crushed like salt, crammed into the crisscross pattern of the rubber, and left there so everyone would know what traitors get. The revving of an engine after midnight, and a close-up of their own misdeeds. They get that last second where they're thinking, this can't be happening, and they keep right on thinking that until it happens. And then they get whatever comes next, hellfire or radiance, or just the endless silence on the wrong side of a closed door. To employ such evocative writing for such a grim situation belies or shows, I think, Heron's humor, but that he takes this seriously. He takes the writing seriously. So he crafts his jokes, and that wasn't a funny section, but the jokes land because he's telling proper stories with proper writing. If you haven't read any of them, you can start with Slow Horses is the first one. His earliest series, which has also just been filmed by Apple, I haven't seen that yet. It's been filmed. There's an early series with a character called Zoe Bohm, with Emma Thompson, double Oscar winner Emma Thompson playing Zoe Bohm, and there are 4 books that all came out before the Slow Horses books, I think. But Slow Horses, the first in the Slough House series, this is up to number 9, and I will keep coming back year after year because they're super fun. Okay, that's plenty. Oh yeah, what I'm reading now, I finished that on the plane, and my next book is Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico, translated from the Italian by, wait for it. I should have looked this up first, right? Oh, no. What page is on? Translated by Sophie Hughes. Now, I just wanted to point out why I struggled to find who's that. And look at this one, the book I showed you earlier, where Jordan Stump, translated by Jordan Stump, on the cover. So we like that. Well done, Daunt Books. And Fitzcarraldo, who published so much translated literature, I think they could afford to give Sophie Hughes a little shout out on the cover, or at least, oh, it says on the back, I didn't need to look up, it says translated by Sophie Hughes on the back. But still, I think there's a fair case to be made for listing the translator, but that's just me. All right, so 2026 started with a bang for me. I've got lots of reading to do. I want, we'll see how this goes, but I would like to do more reading each day rather than save it all up for the weekend, and then maybe I'll tell you about it each day as and when I get through it. But tomorrow's Friday, so I won't make any videos tomorrow night. Take care. God bless. Bye.